Good morning. My name is Fidelma Dunne and I'm an academic clinician working in the Institute for Clinical Trials at the University of Galway. I'm here today with Carmel McDonough, who is a patient of mine and who has participated in a clinical trial that we were participating in Galway.
My name's Carmel McDonough. I'm type 1 diabetic and I have taken part in a clinical trial with Fidelma Dunne for pregnancy. It was a randomisation trial where they wanted to see if a new insulin would be better for women with diabetes while pregnant.
So Carmel, can you tell us about your journey with diabetes from the time you got diagnosed?
When I was 17, it was just the beginning of summer and I was losing a lot of weight. I was very dehydrated, but being 17, a young teenager, I thought it was lovely that I was losing lots and lots of weight, but I could eat whatever I wanted until I went back to school and I was going into my Leaving Cert year. And I actually fell asleep in class one day. And, you'd kind of close your eyes, every now and again, but this was actually falling asleep. And I said, yeah, there's definitely something wrong. So my mother brought me to the local GP and he tested my sugar levels and it just read high, which was over 34. Would a meter have gone up to 34? And you're supposed to be within a range between 4 and 7. So I was asked to come back the next morning fasting. And I think at that stage it was reading about 23. And I was rushed straight into the hospital and the diabetic clinic happened to be on that day. And they brought me in there and I had to go onto the ward to be rehydrated and obviously trained to start using insulin.
Okay.
Yeah.
So quite a diagnosis to get when you were age 17.
It was quite a diagnosis. My parents were very upset about it.
And were you upset at the time?
I wasn't. I don't think I realised the seriousness of it. And I'm the kind of person that just gets on with things. I had to take these injections and everyone else is kind of, oh God, how can you do it? How do you take these injections every day? I do it to stay alive. If I don't take these injections, you
don't stay alive.
You don't stay alive. You can be dead within 3 days.
So would you mind telling us a little bit about the previous treatments that you received for diabetes and really the struggles and frustrations you might have had with those kind of treatments from early on? Because things have changed quite a lot for type 1 diabetes.
They have changed
in the last 20 years or so.
I'm 27 years a diabetic now. So when I started, I was on 2 types of insulin, a mixed insulin and a fast-acting insulin. And
so back then, were you aware of the complications of diabetes? Did you dwell on that much or were you actually aware of them?
I don't think I didn't dwell on them that much. I don't think there was as much awareness around type 1 diabetes as there is now. I went to my diabetic appointments and they'd tell me how I have to be in range. It's very important to be in range. And that's fine. They'd tell me, I was given I went and visited a nutritionist and they've given me, you have your cereal in the morning, your 2 slices of toast and you'd take 6 units of insulin before. And that's what I was doing. And I thought that 6 units, that was religious. You'd have to take this amount of insulin in the morning and, you'd have a set amount for lunch. But I know we're creatures of habits, but I think it changes day to day. Diabetics days are one day is you could do the same thing one day and do the same thing the next and your sugar levels could be completely different.
And it's very hard to get that message back to your caregivers,
absolutely.
The doctors and the nurses and the dietitians who look after you.
They're absolutely brilliant and they're doing their best to look out for you and everything. But diabetics' lives change, your sugar levels can change in the drop of a hat with stress, with your just daily life. You could eat the same thing 2 days in a row, but your sugar levels are going to be completely different. Yeah.
Great.
So what led you to specialise in diabetes and pregnancy, Fidelma?
When I had finished training in Ireland as a junior doctor, I went to the UK and I started doing a PhD in the University of Birmingham. And my PhD topic was calcium metabolism, and it was a laboratory-based project, and I found it to be pretty boring. So I was always looking for other opportunities.
You are more of a people person.
Yeah. So one day they there was a deficiency at a clinic. People didn't turn up to a clinic. I was asked to go and help out with the diabetes and pregnancy clinic, and I'd never done one of those clinics before. And when I went, I was firstly met by a wonderful physician, an older man, but he became a great mentor. And he was very patient-focused. And then I met a population of people I wasn't used to seeing either, because at that time, in the standard diabetes clinic, you were tending to see older people or older people who were poorly controlled or who had devastating complications. So that was your image of diabetes.
Right.
But I met this young population of highly motivated women who just wanted to get on with it, do the right thing, get good results, and have a good outcome to their pregnancy. So this was really a change for me from what I was used to. And I was really taken aback by this and decided that I would go to this clinic on a regular basis, which I started to do, and was really smitten by the whole thing. And I changed my whole career from endocrinology to diabetes, and only did diabetes and pregnancy thereafter. So I got very comfortable with the topic area. I found it easy to read around. I loved the research and the evidence based around it, which started at the same time as learning the clinical subject. And then before I left Birmingham, I was in charge of the diabetes and pregnancy service for the city, which was almost the same population as the whole of Ireland. So I had a huge amount of experience by the time I came back to work here. Yeah. So it was really life-changing for me. And the things that were life-changing were the evidence and research behind it, the mentorship from somebody who was really good with patients and understood the topic area, and the patients. I thought the patients were wonderful. So, they were so highly motivated. So that's how I got into it. In the clinic, women with gestational diabetes is about 90% of the population that we see. And many factors are contributing to that, including more sedentary time, a higher BMI of women becoming pregnant, an older age of women having their first pregnancy, fast food culture, and more type 2 diabetes in the background population. So gestational diabetes encompasses a lot of different types of diabetes, but we do pick up early type 1 diabetes in that population.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you explain the clinical trial that you did with me?
So the purpose of doing a clinical trial is generally to examine whether a new medicine or a new device or a new process of care is better than what we are currently doing. So in your case, you were on a long-acting insulin, which at the time was good.
Yeah.
But the company had come up with a new formulation of a long-acting insulin, which gave more static control during the 12-hour period, or up to 24-hour period that long-acting insulin was being used for. So in pregnancy, because tight glucose control both during the day and the night is really important, I thought that it would be worth offering this trial to the women that we were looking after, either in the pre-pregnancy stage or in the pregnancy stage, because I thought that there would be very good advantages in terms of getting a tighter fasting sugar, but without having hypoglycemia. There's also the added benefits that patients get in a clinical trial beyond the new medicine or device, because they usually get seen more regularly. They have more measurements taken. There are more people looking at those measurements and acting upon them.
Agreed.
So you get the benefit of being in the clinical trial irrespective of the medication that you're on.
Yeah.
So it's a really important thing to offer to patients in any hospital, I would say. So when you come to a hospital or a community setting or a general practitioner setting for treatment, you're coming to ask for treatment. But I think that institution should also offer you the range of research opportunities. So you should almost be offered, you come in, you're saying, well, we'll treat you with A, B, and C. You should also be offered, well, we're running this research program and these are the trials that would suit you. And here's the information. And if you want to participate, we can talk about that. I think we need to move to that level in Ireland to improve patient care further. Yeah. I think it's really important.
There's probably a stigma too around, clinical trials where you think Is this dangerous? And especially when you're pregnant and all you want to do is care for your baby in the best way possible. And you think clinical trial, oh my God, what are they going to do to me? But I tell you, I was randomized for the type of background insulin. I stayed on the one I was on. I got extra care from you and your team. Yeah. You called me every Friday morning. I went in once a month, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you tied it in with my regular visits to the hospital. So I was in the hospital for my pregnancy checkups. And then I had the diabetic trial on top of this.
Yeah.
So I got extra care, and it was fantastic.
That's great.
And,
that's great. I think some people still believe that a clinical trial is to hijack vulnerable patients.
Agreed.
There is that kind of mentality among the population which we need to change. So when you do a trial, it's usually offering you a new treatment in comparison to the standard care that you're on, or additional care on top of the standard care that you're on. So by the time the medicine comes to a clinical trial, it has really been tried and tested over and over again before it ever comes to
patients.
To a patient. Yeah. So the risks of a clinical trial, I think, are minimal, but it's up to the clinician running the clinical trial to really explain it to patients so that they are comfortable with going into a clinical trial.
I think that's the way, when I met you first, you said I would be a perfect candidate for this new trial. And you took the time to explain it to me and went through all the different processes and everything that we would have to go do for the 9 months that I was pregnant, and the aftercare treatment that you know, the follow-up and everything to see how it all went. And I have to say you were brilliant. You really set my mind at ease. And I think it's so important to have patients participating in these trials for going forward, you know, going forward.
Because if we don't do clinical trials, then the treatment options for people like you would still be what you had when you started as a new type 1 patient. Okay. So, Carmel, can you share with us what your pregnancy was like when you were participating in the trial? In particular, for me, what were the thoughts that went through your mind before you made the decision to participate in the trial?
Well, I suppose the things that went through my mind when it comes to clinical trials is you always think that there would be a risk to participating in these trials. I went to the clinic in Galway and I met you, and you discussed the trial with me and the type of insulin that you were using for the trial, the background insulin, and the randomization of it, and the risks that could go along with this trial. But you really did set my mind at ease. You know, that the insulins that you were using had been tested previously. They were there for use in the general market. So it really set my mind at ease that you know, I wouldn't be in a high risk clinical trial.
Okay, so did you conclude then that the benefits of the trial would outweigh the risks for you, whatever those risks would be? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know, because I think it's really important when you're consenting anybody into a clinical trial to be upfront with whatever the perceived risks are, that they're minimised as much as possible. But again, what the benefits are, and it's important that people understand that, I think, before they consent to the trial, because once a person consents, you would like them to continue in the trial. You don't want people to consent and then say, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. So it's really important, I think, to spend a lot of time at the consent process.
Agreed.
So once you finished with that trial, how did the participation in that trial lead on to other benefits for you in terms of your diabetes care? In terms let's talk first about CGM.
Well, I suppose, you know, diabetes for me has just always been something I've had to manage with finger pricks and with injections and things like that. And I suppose you opened the door to me to different aspects of care for type 1 diabetes through CGMs, through pumps and things like this. So you did manage to get me a CGM. So as I said, you know, I'm pricking my fingers multiple times a day for 20 years. It's a lot of work. It's sore. It's heartbreaking. It's hard to do. You do get burnt out.
Yeah.
So once I got the CGM, you have all the information there on your phone. You have your sugar levels updated every 5 minutes without finger pricks. It just makes life so much easier, and managing your diabetes on a day-to-day basis so much easier because it changes so quickly.
Yeah.
Do you know, you could be, you know, just going along your daily life, and next thing your sugar levels are up at 12.
So you can see the highs quickly.
You can see the highs
get
quickly.
The lows
You can
quickly
react.
and do something about it. And that has helped you to get tighter control?
It has, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Along with the closed loop system, you convinced me to go on a pump.
Yeah, you were a bit hesitant about a pump to
I
start
was hesitant. For years I've been hesitant about a pump because I thought, I don't want that thing. I don't want to be lugging that thing around. I don't want it attached to my body. And I thought the CGM was going to be invasive, and it wasn't. And I had that for 2 years, I think, before I got the pump.
Yeah.
So I got the pump, and again, another life-changing piece of kit.
Yeah. And again, I guess if you hadn't participated in that original clinical trial, you probably wouldn't have got those two pieces of technology as quickly.
I don't think I would have.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have. Yeah. Definitely, I wouldn't have gotten them as quickly because they weren't readily available.
Yeah, yeah.
And I suppose I did the research myself as well, you know, thinking there is more to this illness. There is a better way to manage it.
Yeah.
And with your help, it made a huge difference. Can you tell us more about CGMs and its benefits?
Okay. So I see the difference between finger pricking and CGM, the difference between a Mini and a Porsche. So obviously the Porsche is more expensive than the Mini, but the benefits you get in terms of the luxury and the feedback.
It is luxury.
And the feedback from the CGM is enormous. So it's very difficult to work with patients with a chronic disease and say, you need to get your control tighter. And all the patient has is 4 or 5 finger stick tests per day. So your one at breakfast could be perfect, your one at lunch could be perfect, but God knows what happened in the 4 hours between that time. So information is really important in anything. You can work on information, you can make changes based on information. So I think the gathering of the CGM or continuous monitoring of your glucose every 5 minutes, every day of the week allows us to see patterns, and then you can make sensible changes or advise patients on sensible changes that they can make. So I've seen a fantastic improvement in patient control based on CGM.
Well, it's patients taking control of the disease themselves rather than, you know, relying on
empowering people. And that's really important.
To take control of their illness. For women with diabetes, what should they ideally know before pregnancy?
So if you become pregnant and you haven't got good control, you're on a catch-up for the whole of pregnancy. So ideally, you need to have time with the patient before they become pregnant. And the patient needs to know that it's going to take perhaps 3 to 6 months to get everything organised before they become pregnant. But if you allow yourself the luxury of that time, and the patient has a regular kind of 2 to 4 week interaction with you for that couple of months, by the time they're ready to become pregnant, you have everything almost perfect. And you can then reassure the patient that the outcome of the pregnancy is likely to be very good. If you start with poor control and no folic acid and this, that, and the other, you can never really undo the loss that you have gained from those abnormalities at the start of pregnancy. So for a pre-pregnancy care program, that's what we concentrate on for the 3 to 6 months before pregnancy. So, and that gives tremendous benefits in terms of good outcomes for the pregnancy, but it's also very cost effective for the health services. So people who come to pre-pregnancy care followed by routine antenatal care, their cost of care is at least a third, about $2,500 per person less for the duration of the pregnancy. And that's all driven by the cost of looking after a baby who has been born with congenital malformations and the need for neonatal unit care. So they're very costly things to the state, and attending for pre-pregnancy care will eliminate that almost completely. So how has life changed for you, Carmel, since you were in the trial and you've now been updated with the new technologies? And I guess you've been reintroduced to the routine diabetes service and you're embracing that. How has that changed things for you?
Well, since I got the CGM and the pump, I do have tighter controls. We'd say in new money, as you said, I'm 80 to 90% in range now with the pump, where I was 50 to 60% in range,
with the injections.
With the injections. So it's definitely prolonged my life.
Yeah.
And it makes daily life a lot more manageable. I manage 2 Shepherd's Huts Airbnbs in County Galway, which are really busy all the time. That's constant go, go, go. And then 2 kids on top of that. And my partner who works from home, managing the house, everything. You can just go about your day now and let your machines do the work for you.
Yeah.
It beeps every now and again and you have to tend to it, but it's not like you have to stop and test your sugar levels. You're waiting for 5 seconds to get that. You're waiting half an hour. You were waiting half an hour before, while you were taking your injection before you could eat. Now it's down to 15 minutes. So all these big changes, they are big changes. I can't say they're small changes. They are big changes. They've made a huge difference to my daily life and my daily routines.
Okay, so Carmel, I see that you have a number of photographs with you today.
I brought in some photos of my life.
Yeah.
The first one you can see
Do
there.
you mind we go through them?
Yeah, no, please do.
So describe this photograph for me.
This is I'll call him my new little nephew, Ted, and my daughter, Molly, and her little cousin, Daisy. So we went down to meet them in Limerick a couple of weeks ago. He's only 2 months old, a beautiful little baby boy.
And I see you're colour coordinated.
We are
You're
very
all in
colour
blue.
coordinated. I don't know how we managed
that.
We sent the email.
Did you do that intentionally?
No, we didn't. No, but it just worked out that way.
Yeah, it's a beautiful photograph.
Blue does suit us though, doesn't it?
You're all blonde, so it's a good one.
Yeah.
Now, this is a lovely one of you sitting on a bench in a forest. Do you want to describe that?
That was actually, we were talking about it earlier on Inchigill Island.
Oh, yes.
We went out for Mass for, they do a blessing of the graves out there on Inchigill every year.
Okay.
So this is my first year out in about 20 years.
Yeah, it's lovely to go there.
Molly wasn't feeling all the best that day, but we had a lovely day out.
Oh, that's a lovely photograph. And of course, that's Loch Corrib.
That is Loch Corrib, yes.
Now, this is a very handsome teenager. Who is he?
My beautiful baby boy, Ernie.
Ernie, that's
Ernie.
a lovely name.
It is, family name.
Yeah.
He just turned 16 and all he wants to do is play guitar. Thankfully,
He's a
very
young man.
happy, healthy young man.
Yeah.
Back in the Gaeltacht at the moment.
Oh, lovely. Now, here's another lovely one of the water. So explain that one to us.
Yeah, we do. We used to spend an awful lot of time on Loch Corrib. My father would have a boat and my brother used to bring us out. So we'd head straight for Inchigill and get the barbecue going and have a walk around the island and visit the tea house. But that's Molly and Liam there.
Going on a boat ride.
We landed in Inchigill and the dog Charlie there comes along with us as well. The impact on my life of innovative medicines, being diagnosed in 1997, where I had 2 very slow insulins, one taking a half an hour and the background insulin, obviously. The checking your blood sugar levels by pricking your fingers, which was taking 20 seconds, to modern medicines, innovative medicines of today, where I'm not pricking my finger at all. My sugar levels are tested every 5 minutes with my CGM. My pump that has the closed loop system. So my pump talks to my CGM and regulates my sugar levels for me, which makes daily life with children, with a hectic life, with the job, everything like that. It just makes life so much easier and it lets you forget a little bit about your type 1 diabetes. It's always in the background. There's never a day off. But the innovation of medicines today has made life so much easier for type 1 diabetics. If you had a message to policymakers around new medicines, what would that be?
So I think policy makers really need to get into the groove of the patient. They need to imagine themselves as a patient with whatever chronic disease they're responsible for.
Put yourself
and
in
to
their
ask the
shoes.
question, what would I like? What would I need to lead as normal a life as possible with this disease? So if we look at type 1 diabetes, especially during pregnancy, I think Novo Nordisk have been excellent in their strategies for innovating and upgrading insulins to newer, faster, better insulins, certainly since I have entered this space back in 1995. So I'd like to see that improvement continue, because we can always make better, quicker, faster, more reliable insulins. I think this is really, really important in pregnancy, where we're trying to refine things even tighter and tighter, and to keep that sugar within the tight time, the tight levels that we know will be of benefit. So I think companies can help us to achieve that. It's up to clinicians then to put their name forward to test these newer, innovative insulins and medicines, and for us to explain it properly to patients so that they can engage with it also. Because if we can have that circle of events happening, then of course we can move things and make it better always for the patient with type 1 diabetes. I think in the pregnancy space, I firmly believe all pregnant women, regardless of the type of diabetes that they have, should have the technologies available, be they CGM or pumps, to help them manage the diabetes better. So the baby in the womb doesn't say, does my mother have GDM or type 1 or MODY or type 2? All they see is this excessive sugar, which is what we're trying to keep away from them. So I would advocate with policymakers also to, think of the patient. How would you like to prod yourself 4 times a day for your insulin, and ask for another 7 or 10 prods on your fingers every day for the duration of a pregnancy? So again, I would advocate strongly to policymakers for the use of technologies. We should at least be able to offer them to all women during pregnancies with diabetes.
Diabetes is hard. Pregnancy is hard. And having the two of them together. And someone, getting gestational diabetes on top of their pregnancy, it has to be so difficult to have. So to have that innovative.
And I think it's not fair to withhold new treatments and new technologies from people where they will benefit from them. Purely based on cost, because we and others have shown them to be very cost effective. So I would again urge, companies to keep innovating their products to make them better, slicker, easier to take, easier to administer, and for policymakers to really look carefully at the evidence in various categories of people to make it available for patients.
It's a positive outcome in the long run for everybody, really, isn't it?
And, maybe we haven't always been very good on preventing disease, but certainly in the space of diabetes and pregnancy, we have huge abilities to make women healthier in the future. And if the mothers are healthy, then the families and the offspring will be healthy. And certainly in terms of gestational diabetes, preventing diabetes long-term in that population, and preventing diabetes in the offspring and preventing obesity in the offspring is again for the health services, for the families, and for the cost of care.
What's being done at the moment to spotlight the importance of clinical trials in Ireland?
At the moment, there's a very strong focus on clinical research. And this is coming from the top levels in the Department of Health. So Minister Donnelly has convened a group which is called the Clinical Trial Oversight Group. And the purpose of that group is to examine what are the current barriers to Ireland being a country of interest for companies, both in pharma and technologies, to do their trials in. So he has convened a group which includes people from all over the country. So I'm representing the Institute for Clinical Trials from Galway, and we're meeting monthly, face-to-face, with the Minister present for most meetings. And at the end of the period, he wants a document that describes what the barriers are, what we think the solutions might be. And it is my understanding that the Minister is keen on funding these solutions to allow companies to see Ireland as a go-to place to conduct their research. So that's coming from the national level. Around the country then, in Dublin, Cork, Limerick, Galway, and indeed in Belfast, there are clinical research facilities. So the operational units are in place to conduct research if the government and the HSE and the players in that market or space can attract industry partners to bring their trials to Ireland. On top of that, the funding agencies in the country, in particular the Health Research Board, they fund investigators like myself to ask a question, design a trial, and deliver that trial to answer a question. So that's independent of industry partners. And that's also a really important aspect of what's happening in the country. We're very lucky that the Health Research Board has funded the clinical trial network in diabetes. So in a disease-specific area called diabetes. And we're using the money from the Health Research Board to build the partnerships around the country from where we conduct these clinical trials once the national barriers to conducting trials have been overcome. So we do very good work in Ireland, but there are still obstacles that companies with new medicines and new technologies perceive as being too great to take their trials to Ireland. And it's really important from a health point of view, but also from an economic point of view for the country to overcome these barriers. In the UK, they have shown that for every £1 spent in a clinical trial, the economy benefits £4. So if you have the same parameters here in Ireland, it's economically also in the best interests of the country to overcome these barriers. So I think it's a very exciting time, and I think the Minister will really make changes because I think the Minister is really engaged in the space of innovation for better health in the country. Thank you for listening to the Innovate for Life series. If you found this episode interesting, please share and look out for other episodes in this series of Life Because of New Medicines. Thank you.